Hi Luke, Amy here. Sorry it's taken me so long to get you this feedback. I noticed in your email that you said you wouldn't be working on it till Saturday. The paper's actually due tonight at midnight, so Saturday would be too late. However, because I've been so slow in getting you this feedback, I'll give you an extra 24 hours on the assignment so you can turn it in by midnight tomorrow, Saturday. So let me know if that's a problem for you or if you have any questions about that. So in terms of your overall paper, it is formatted correctly. Your works cited does need a few tweaks. You want to use hanging indents instead of first line indents, and one way you can do that usually is by just hitting Control T. However, you've already got a first line indent in there, so you'll have to go all the way up to your paragraph box, and instead of the first line under indentation special here, select hanging, and actually you can do that for the whole thing all at once. So that the first lines will stick out on the left, and then this is going to connect to my comments about your in-text citations. While most of these are correct, although you do need to italicize all of your publication titles, in text, you're not referring to the sources by the first word of whatever the citation is here in the works cited, and that's a problem because you should actually be you having a one-to-one correspondence between whatever the first word in this works cited citation is and the word you're using to refer to it in text. So some of your citations in text are just done through links and not even through in text and parenthetical citations, which is not appropriate for a formal academic essay. And so I would encourage you just to go back and check whatever the first word is of these citations. Again, you don't want this one to be all caps, and then use those words. Typically it's going to be the author's last name, except for in this first instance when you would just use an abbreviated version of the title here to refer to your sources in text either through author tags or parentheticals. So that'll be my first kind of comprehensive comment that you'll need to address all the way throughout your paper. It's definitely anytime you're using a link, I'm going to have commented on it because, again, in a formal academic essay, it's not conventional to use links to refer to your sources. It's actually conventional to use the author tags and parenthetical citations instead, using whatever that first word is from the works cited entry at the end. So these are all ones that you'll definitely need to change, but then there are other places throughout the essay where you need more citations. It wasn't even linked to, and so those you would have to go back in and add. So any information that you have from one of those sources needs to be cited. Even if you have a few sentences in a row, every single idea that comes up needs to be cited, not just one citation for a bunch of sentences or something like that. And then also, this is a good example of an author tag, but anytime you do have page numbers available for the sources, let me check this one. This one looks like a database source, and so you would have the page numbers available to you as long as it's in PDF. Those need to be included in parentheses. See, I'm not going to be able to go back and find that one. Those need to be included in parentheses at the end of the sentence, as well as whatever that first word is. So here you have the name in the sentence, so that's good, but you still need to have a parenthetical with the page number, whatever that might be, at the end of the sentence. And if you didn't have the author's last name here, it would need to go in the parenthetical instead. So that's just a tip on how to do your citations overall. But just remember that linking to them is not enough when doing a formal academic MLA style paper. And then the other big comprehensive comment that I had has to do with your thesis. You have a lot of strong paragraphs in the body of your essay, but right now your thesis doesn't exactly match up with those paragraphs, and it is not comprehensive. So you do a good job with surprising reversal, but you only mention 2 of the benefits, whereas in your paper, in the body of your paper, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. you have four major reasons why there were actually positive outcomes from the spill, and so you just want to make sure that all of those are summed up in your thesis at the beginning. And then the other thing I noticed is typically when you're laying out points like this in terms of the benefits or drawbacks of something, it kind of sparks your reader to think, okay, well then what should we do about this, or so what? What is the overall outcome that you're trying to achieve here by arguing in favor of or against this thing? And even though you're arguing that this was all good, there can still be an outcome that comes from this. And I noticed you getting at that in the body of your essay again, because I do think the body itself is stronger than the thesis in this case. But you say the positive effects should be recognized. So that's actually a higher order proposal claim. It's a call to action. It's something that you're saying should be done based on all the positive outcomes that you've outlined in previous paragraphs. And as such, just like all your other points, it should be included in your thesis, particularly at the end of your thesis, because it is the most complex, highest order claim that you include. And so it's kind of the claim on which all of your other claims will culminate, or in this case, it would represent your central claim, and the other claims are just points or subclaims, really reasons as to why you believe this proposal should be enacted. And I think it's great that you're addressing it here at the end of your paper, but I think, again, it needs to be in your thesis, but also it could be a little more specific. So how exactly should the positive effects be recognized? I'm looking for things like who, what, when, where, why, who should be recognizing, how should they be recognized, where should they be recognized. And so if you're talking to voters, if you're talking to customers who may have boycotted BP and they need to go back to patronizing the company or something like that. Just be a little more specific here in terms of who should be doing what. And I know that recognizing the effects is the what, but how exactly should they be going about doing that? And then if this proposal is a big part of your argument, it needs to be separate from your actual conclusion. So you can just start a new paragraph here where you start to recap your proposal, or excuse me, your entire argument, not just the proposal. Start a new paragraph there. That will constitute your conclusion, and then you'll just need to go back and make sure that this is comprehensive of all your points, because right now there's a couple that get left out. And then this itself will just be a paragraph on its own where you're discussing the proposal that you're calling for. Some of this information needs to be cited, but it would help if you also just added some more evidence in general in terms of what should be done, recognizing these positive effects and how. But again, once you make your proposal a little more specific, that will be a little bit easier to do, I think. Okay, so again, in your thesis, you really only list a couple of the positive effects. You say positives resulted from the spill, including advancement in containment research and stabilizing the economy. You do a really good job following along with the surprising reversal structure of your thesis by discussing this counter-argument first, although there again are some citation issues here. But then, instead of going into the containment research point first, you start with the stabilizing the economy point first. And so that alone suggests to me that you need to reverse the order of these 2 points in your thesis. But then beyond that, we get to a paragraph right afterwards that kind of has to do with biodiversity. And right now you're framing it as a counter-argument. Many people think it affected all forms of life, but in fact, many species flourished. I would say rather than framing this as a counter-argument, rework this so that it becomes one of the points to support your overall claim, so that it becomes one of those positive outcomes. So you do say many species flourished. That seems to suggest that there could be a positive outcome associated here with growth in biodiversity, or at least promoting the success of these species or something like that. So I would incorporate that into your thesis in order, so it would it would be reorganized so that stabilizing the economy comes first, then something about biodiversity, and then your other points in the order in which they appear in the body of the essay. So right after the biodiversity paragraph, you have a paragraph about the research opportunities, so that would make sense according to your thesis if we were to rework it in the way that I've suggested here. But then even after that, you have a paragraph about the overall corporate benefits, how profits skyrocketed for certain companies who were called in to help out, and then in general, it benefited the economy all around. This is another point that needs to be added to your thesis at the beginning, but I would suggest that actually, if this is a point about the national economy in general, it would make logical sense to discuss this in correspondence with your earlier point about the local economy, which is actually your first supporting point as to why it should be seen as a positive. And so I would drag this up to earlier so that your 2 points about the economy are right next to each other. You have 1 point about the local economy, you have 1 point about the national economy, and then you can go into your discussion of the biodiversity and the research opportunities, etc., etc. And so if you do that, then you would need to go ahead and rework your thesis to mimic that. So you might even say here, stabilizing the economy both locally and nationally, or for the local economy and national corporations, or however you want to say that. And then, as I mentioned before, before I get to that, after you talk about the research opportunities, you still have yet another paragraph talking about the enhanced oil field operation practices, and you say this is the most important positive result to you, so I would say this definitely does not, you do not want to leave this out of your thesis. So you might say something here, advances in containment research and improved oil operations, or something along those lines. And then after that is when you actually start to talk about the fact that the positive effects should be recognized. And once again, if this is going to be part of your essay in the body, it needs to be included in your thesis at the beginning in terms of that overall proposal on which these other points about the positive are going to culminate. So something like, therefore, as a consequence of these positive results, these positive benefits should be recognized, and I'm just copying this from how you said it later in the essay, but you would want to be a little bit more precise about, again, who, what, when, how they should be recognized. So making your proposal just a little bit more specific there. And then if you rework it like this, you can see that your entire thesis, starting with the counter argument and going through, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons and your proposal, your thesis is going to provide a much more distinct map of what the paragraphs are going to be that show up in the remainder of the body of the essay. And then once you have that precise proposal specified a little bit more directly here, that's what you'll want to connect to as you move in and out of each point paragraph. So you'll want to say things like, your counter argument is a little bit different, but once you get to your first point here, this is a pretty strong topic sentence as it is now, but once you add that proposal, you'll need to connect to it here as well. So you might even say there are many reasons why the BP oil spill should be recognized, not even could be seen, but should be recognized. That would better match how you're proposing this in your thesis and later in the essay, and it would be a more direct call to action here. And then you would do it at the end of the paragraph as well. So something like, therefore, because it benefited the local economy, the positive effects of the spill should be recognized. So then it's okay to have this information, but you still need another topic sentence here that would tie into the thesis again and present the point. So yet another positive benefit that should be recognized is the benefit to the national economy. And then at the end of the paragraph again, you do recap the point about benefiting the economy all around, but just connect to your proposal again. Therefore, these positive benefits should be recognized. And again, by whom, how, etc. Again, reframe this one so that it's not so much of a counterargument as an actual point. Yet another positive benefit that needs to be recognized is the effects on biodiversity or something like that. And again, at the end of the paragraph, these benefits to biodiversity must be recognized. This is probably your strongest topic sentence here. I would say you want the other ones to look more like this, but again, if you're going to have that proposal as a main part of your argument, you need to connect to it there and again at the end of the paragraph as well. And again, just saying must be recognized or your proposal should be recognized here. This is a good topic sentence otherwise, but at the end of that paragraph too. And then I'll provide you a link so you can just double check your citations. But let me know if you have any other questions.